Hey guys, Wolvie here and welcome back to the channel. As always, the usual disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Now for this particular video, it is a video log of sorts, but it is the revelation of components of another build I'm doing for 2023. So who is it for, the purposes, etc, etc. So basically the build I'm going to be doing in the coming weeks is for a buddy of mine. We know each other through the fanfiction writing community. We're buddies on Discord. I was starting to bother me a little bit, but anyway. So I reached out to her, and it is a female for the record. I asked her, hey, let me gift you a build because her master's degree involves like the film industry. I mean, I know I have parts of this wrong, but I do want to mention, it is like tied to her field of study at university. Like I said, she does have her master's degree in the for what she needs to compete for. So it's mostly like quote unquote work, but it's also gaming on the side. So I had to think about, okay, how do I want to play the memory, chassis, etc., etc. So for this one, this is part one of the new build. It's not a secret build, and I will have a separate video on the secret build filmed on another day, another time. And don't mind the bedhead. Yeah, I woke up late today, so. And Sandy here says hi. Say hi to the camera. Say hi to everybody. I don't think he wants to be bothered right now. But anyway, for this video, it is going to be a component reveal. I'm going to reveal another thing with it in the sense of like what I've done to the build thus far. So stay tuned for that when I get to it. Now for the memory. Now I'm going here first because I want to make sure everybody is aware of what's going on now. Some of the parts I picked for this particular build were done before the announcement of AM5. So it's one of those things, there's not much of a choice I could really do in the sense of wasting even more money on certain components. I've been holding on to some of these components for close to a year, if not more so. So it's one of those things is where it's like I'm going with AM4 instead of AM5, and it's because I feel more comfortable using previous generation components as opposed to current gen. And I know I had a heated disagreement with somebody on Discord over the very matter, because it's like people don't seem to realize when it comes down to issues with current gen, meaning AM5 for AMD, or in other cases 13th gen Intel, some cases 12th gen Intel. So it's one of those things one has to be really careful with when it comes to current gen components. I mean, what's the point on going after current gen if there are people reporting issues with what they have now? I mean, why not stick with something a bit more reliable like previous gen, in AMD's case, AM4 or even AM3, and then you have Intel like anything up to 11th gen. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, for the memory, and this is a 2-pack here. So this is the G-Skill Trident Z RGB. Now this particular cam, I'm going to zoom in on one of them just so you guys get to see what's going on. Now one of these is a 32 gigabyte kit, is 2x16. However, I'm going to zoom out because of what the buddy wants to do in sense of film editing, video editing. She is going to be needing at least a 64 gigabyte kit for memory. So I bought 2 packs of these, and this is again 16 times 2 per pack, which so it's I have 2 packs of 32 gig kits. They're identical, and when it comes to using 4 sticks of RAM for memory for a build, you want to make sure the kits are identical to the letter, meaning that all 4 sticks in this case is DDR4, or if it's a DDR5 kit for AM5 or current gen Intel, want to make sure it is the identical kit if you're using 4 sticks. Now, I could have gone 2 times 32, but financially it wasn't feasible for me. So I went with 16 times 4 instead. Now, there's a 3200 megahertz, like the quote unquote speed, and this is optimized for AMD. Now, I went this route, like, since of that, because it's like you have to think about certain motherboards. Certain motherboards may not be able to handle 3600 or 4000 if it's AM4. It may not be able to handle that. So for me, 3200 is a safe spot in my personal opinion, and I'm happy I went with this because for the 64 gigabyte kit you see here, which is 16 times 4, it costs to be a little less than 200 like before. Yeah, it's a little less than 200 before tax. Now for the cooler, I'm going with an AIO, and it's like for me, I'm one of those people where it's like I am not a particular cheerleader for builds that look claustrophobic. And in some cases, depending on the chassis, I would rather go with an air cooler or an air cooler. To rephrase this slightly, an air cooler that is low profile, because I know Deadpool, that's one of those where the air cooler is low profile because the chassis itself is compact. It gives me, more breathing room. I can see everything. I can see all the components. So it's either an air cooler that's low profile or an AIO, which means I don't have to worry about that space constraint. And for the particular chassis, where it's like you can either mount it at the front with a 280 millimeter AIO, or on the top with a 240. I went with a 240, and this is the NZXT Kraken X53 RGB in black. And I'll reveal why I got a black one instead of white a little bit later in the format of the chassis itself. But I went with this because it's like, for the build, I wanted some RGB, but not every last thing to be RGB. So that's that on that. So again, this is it's in black. I have ordered it. I don't have it yet. Now, I do want to mention here before I reveal some of the remaining components is that I do need to order a sound card, and that's because the motherboard, the primary motherboard, is one of my older ones, and that's Odin's original motherboard, which I will be revealing that a little bit later. So, before I pause this real quick, I do want to mention that, like I said, the reason why I'm going after a sound card is because, again, Odin's original motherboard, and I don't want to make sure I run into any problems in sense of, posting, all that jazz. Now, for the primary motherboard, this is what I was hinting at. This is the ROG Strix X570E Gaming Wi-Fi. Now, like I said, this is the original motherboard for Odin. And if you remember, when I was doing a quote-unquote rebuild of Odin, I actually tested this motherboard. So, I do know that this is 100% working. Now, what I did before filming this is that I have a spare flash drive. I actually have to do a BIOS update on this one because I know, and that's just for safety precautions, all that stuff. So for this one, I do know for a fact it is working. It is Odin's original motherboard, and this is going to be the motherboard for that build. So, and this will work well with a 240 millimeter AIO cooler mounted on the top. Now I'm going to reveal the backup motherboard just to be to err on the side of caution, and that is ROG Strix B550F Gaming Wi-Fi 2. Now I'm going with this as a backup, and it just I just want to be err on the side of caution. Have an extra back motherboard on hand in case the original one doesn't work. And the way I did this, I did this a while ago, is that I did a BIOS update on this one, not long after I got it. And the reason why I went about that route is because of the processor. So that way everything is working as it's intended. And the storage that I got for this so far, and by the storage, I'm going to just refer to the NVMe section of it, because I do have an additional storage for the build, but that storage is going to be meant for like storing like completed projects. And this is the processor right here, the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. Like I said, when I got some of the components, it was purchased before the announcement of AM5. So there's not a whole lot I can really do in sense of like switching certain things out, and it's not really recommended if that's in this particular situation. Now, for that, okay, actually I did have that. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up this particular PWM fan is because of the case, and I'm going to reveal the case right now. It is the NZXT H5 Elite in black. Now you guys get to see why I went with the color that I did. Because you can see here is that you have the mounting abilities at the top, not just the front. And when it comes to the H5 Flow, H5 Elite, there's going to be an additional fan at the like below, like where you get. Let me zoom in a little bit. So right here where I have myself at, this is kind of like where the there's going to be an extra fan, and the extra fan is meant to help cool the GPU. So what I did here for this particular build, and I'm gonna actually I wouldn't say what I did. I'm gonna reveal what I exactly did a little later on. So for the place where that section where it's like the fan gets to cool the GPU and it's set to intake automatically, I went with this one. I bought this at Micro Center for $13 United States before tax. And this particular fan is the Be Quiet Silent Wings 2. It's 100% black, and it's just PWM. I mean, I was wanting zero RGB in that section because it would have defeated the purpose, in my personal opinion. So I went with this just to make sure it's set to intake and it's cooling the GPU from that bottom section. Now, with this particular chassis, instead of like the fans the H5 Elite came with, regardless if you buy it in black or white, there was a fan that's already pre-installed where cools the GPU from the bottom. Now the fan, I moved that from where we're supposed to be, where it's to cool the GPU, and I'm going to tell you where I moved it to. I moved it right over there. And by there is I have it set to the rear, and it's also set to exhaust. So that way, when it comes to people see the build, the finished product that is, that way you get to see all NZXT with the front fans, the fans on the top via the AIO cooler, alongside the fan at the back set to exhaust. And that's how I wanted it, so that way people would be like, damn, that's pretty good. Now, what I also did instead of purchasing certain other things is that for once I get my hands on the cooler, and I did this a little while ago with the fans at the front alongside the Be Quiet fan at the bottom, is that I purchased, again at Micro Center, a grand total of two PWM splitter cables. For the one tied to the AIO cooler when I get it, it's a two-way splitter. Now for the two fans at the front alongside the Be Quiet at the bottom, I also purchased a three-way splitter. So that way I don't have to worry about do I have to switch out the motherboard, that sort of thing, when I could easily go after a PWM splitter cable. Now, what I like about the H5 Elite is that it comes with the RGB controller, and it's a grand total of 3 spots on that. 2 of them are with the fans that the chassis came with. Now, that third spot is going to be tied to the AIO cooler when I get my hands on it. So that way, that's that on that in the sense of what occupies what. And with the two-way splitter for the PWM, I can attach that to the cooler like the CPU cooler area, and it makes things a lot easier for me overall. Now, regarding some of the other components, okay, I just passed up one, and this is going to be the power supply, and I went with this one for future-proofing reasons only. That is the EVGA Supernova 1000 watt P6 power supply. This is 80 plus platinum. I have no regrets buying this. But as I said, I bought this particular one for future-proofing reasons. Meaning that if my buddy, if she were to like upgrade the computer later on, she has she has a decent amount of breathing room. And that's what I want. Now for the graphics card, it is going to be, let me get myself out of here for a little bit. Or that works just fine. It is the EVGA for the Win 3 3070 Ti graphics card. And like I said, this was purchased ahead of the whole thing regarding the AM5 announcement, the 12th and 13th gen announcement, that sort of thing. So that was bought ahead of that announcement. So there's not a whole lot I can do in the sense of like swapping out additional parts and spending too much money, and more so than I already have. Now, regarding some of the NVMe storage, okay, so I'm back. I had to check on something real quick. So for storage, I'm just going to describe what I got. So for the quote-unquote boot drive, it is a 2 terabyte Samsung 980 Pro. That's NVMe SSD. That's the boot drive. I went with something, I felt that was going to be as reliable as possible. Now for the first storage drive, and this is the one that's occupying that lower spot on the motherboard. Granted, it is Gen 3, but it's because of that backup motherboard. So it's like thinking and planning. So I went with as just a storage drive. It is the Samsung 970 EVO Plus, and this is a 2 terabyte drive, which is identical to the Samsung 980 Pro in the sense of like how many terabytes. They're both 2 terabyte storage drives. Now, regarding a third drive, there's 3 storage drives totally here, and the hard disk drive is meant for specifically storing completed film projects. It is the Seagate Barracuda 8 terabyte, and again, it's a 3.5 inch hard disk drive for storing projects, meaning that you can store certain things on on your storage drives, but certain programs have to be on the boot drive, which is important to know. Now, another thing I want to point out here is that regarding what I did with the build so far, so this particular video, again, it's part 1. Not as only is it a component reveal, it's also some progress I've done. Now, when it comes down to the sense of the quote-unquote build itself, the sense of like the chassis prep, it is 100% finished because I have to wait for the AIO cooler to show up, and I also have to make sure I have my hands on the sound card, so that way I could do one straight thing for building the PC for her. Now, what I also did is that I had to update the BIOS information on a flash drive that I had spare floating around, so that way it's all good on my end. So, you guys just saw a notification from my Instagram. My bad, I did not see this coming. But in any case, so I just want to give you guys a bit of an update on the new build. That's probably going to be what this series is going to be called. But again, those are the parts. I have just about everything. I just need to go to Micro Center to grab the sound card. It's more than likely going to be an identical one to what Odin has, and that's because of the original motherboard. And some of the parts I revealed, like I said, for the storage, it is Samsung for NVMe. The hard disk drive is by Seagate. Both motherboards, the primary and the backup, are by ASUS. EVGA is for both the power supply and my graphics card. The processor is AMD Ryzen 5900X. NZXT on cooling some of the fans, all that good stuff, the chassis. And it's one of those things where I'm really am looking forward to doing this particular build. Again, this build is definitely a year in the making, maybe a little bit more so. So I'm just looking forward to building it, and I'm really looking forward to see how clean it turns out in the end. So that's that on all of that. I do have other videos where I want to talk about other things, life updates, all that good stuff. So that's that on that. And I'm done with this video finally. And Sandy I don't know what he's doing. I think he's taking a nap. I think he might be watching his Fire boyfriends for all I know. So with Wolfie here signing off, I will catch you all on the flip side.